Hi, this is Steve Rigolosi, and tonight on Forgotten Mysteries, I have for you The Shelton Conspiracy by Rae Foley. This is a copyright 1967 by Dodd and Mead. You can see it is part of their Red Badge Mystery imprint. And I'll also show you that they have their logo there on the front board. They've also got it on the spine. So this is from back in the days when mystery imprints really had a very strong identity as to who they were and what they published. And I could probably do a video at some point about my perceptions of the different editorial philosophies of these great classic mystery suspense imprints. For now, I'll say Dodd and Mead and the Red Badge line, I would say, are probably the most traditional of them. They tend to be not too noir. They tend to be pretty whodunit based with a, in a specific location, not a lot of subplots, not a lot of complexity. I can see why this list picked up Agatha Christie as one of their authors. You can see on the back cover here that they are marketing, the authors on their list, and I've read most of these folks, but not all of them. Kelly Ruse, I haven't read her or him yet. John Wakefield. So there are a few here that I still have to get to, but I'm going to get to all of them eventually. So when I first heard about Rae Foley on the back of a different jacket, I thought that's just a name that had made no impression on my head before that moment. So I thought, well, I wonder what she's all about. And when I did a little bit of searching, most of the stuff that I found said that she was good and people really liked her books. And so I thought, what have I got to lose? Always looking for new forgotten mysteries for myself and for this channel. So I got this one, The Shelton Conspiracy. And so it's actually, as I mentioned before, it's got a pretty straightforward plot. It's what I call the get the hell out of my town plot. So we see this not infrequently. A lot of Lee Child's books use this device where, some unassuming stranger comes to town, and before you know it, every single person that he encounters is threatening him, making all these veiled threats or overt threats, like, get out of our town. We don't want you here. You're here to stir up trouble. Well, keep it up and you'll be stirring up trouble from the grave. And everybody talks really tough to the person, which only, makes that person dig in his heels even more deeply. And the person returning to the town of Shelton, Connecticut here is, his name is Hall Masson, and he grew up in town, went away, went into the service, has a younger brother who was actually, his name's Robin, actually was a war hero in Vietnam, to the point where the town has actually constructed an obelisk in its green as a monument to Robin and his heroism in the Vietnam War. But on the very first page of the book, we get an excerpt from a newspaper article saying that Robin, who's only in his late 20s, and his lovely young wife have both been shot in their house. And Hall, who's half a world away, he's in Egypt researching a book because he's a university professor and lecturer, says, I'm going to go home and I'm vowing by all that is holy that I am going to find the killer and bring him to justice. Which, that kind of plot makes a little bit more sense to me when somebody has a personal stake in finding out who the murderer is, right? You want to figure out who killed your brother. But I just finished another book. I won't mention the name of it, where it's one of those books where this amateur sleuth starts sticking her nose into other people's business, and everyone willingly gives her information and takes her into their confidence and becomes her best friend. And it was totally unbelievable. Like, I got to draw the line there. But here at least Hall is showing up to try to get an answer to a question. Of course, implying by doing this that the local cops don't know what they're doing, which isn't really the case. But of course, he's going to, run afoul of them. Not as much as he runs afoul of other people in town. Like his first night in town, the 4 tires on his car are slashed, and he generates a hatred and loathing in everybody that he comes across. From the local garage owner to the sweet little old lady, who's everybody's friend. So clearly something is being hidden, something's being hushed up, something that the town knows about that they're trying to keep, keep under wraps. And another thing, like I can't really imagine that towns care that much, right? That a town will see itself as solely a reflection on one person's behavior. I don't know. I mean, it's New England, it's Connecticut in the 60s. Maybe that was more of a thing. Although, maybe I'm wrong about this, because I used to live in a town, sort of a quiet, sleepy little town, where 2 teenagers made the news because the boy, because they were like 16 or 17, had gotten the girl pregnant. Somehow she managed to hide her pregnancy for the whole term and deliver the baby, and they didn't know what to do with it, so they left it in a dumpster in New York City. And the town was scandalized by that, and for a while it became known as the town that harbored these fugitive, overprivileged kids who just, they were stupid, right? And they didn't know what they were doing. But I didn't take that as a personal reflection on myself, but the town did feel a little bit weird about it. So maybe there are things in real life where towns will all gather together to protect a secret or to protect a person, because that is what is happening here. So what I'll say about this book is that it goes down easy. It's a fast read. You get right into it. The circumstances are mysterious. They don't hold up to close scrutiny. Like, this is one of those constructed mysteries that feels like a constructed mystery as opposed to something that maybe could be real or realistic. But it all moves along quickly. Information is parceled out on a pretty regular basis, so that keeps the reader interested. And then there are 1 or 2 revelations in here that I thought were, quite surprising and quite good. So by the time I got to the end, I thought, okay, this is a writer who knew how to tell a story, and clearly was successful, because she had published about 40 books in her time between the 1930s and the 1970s. Her real name, by the way, was Elinor Denniston, but one of the pseudonyms she wrote under was Rae Foley, and it looks like that's the pseudonym she used for most of her output. The writing is straightforward, plain, not fancy, no real humor. I don't want to say no real insight. That's not really fair. The characters get into some philosophizing, which honestly made me cringe a little bit, because it was so, it kind of read to me like Cliff Notes. Like, it was like so painfully simplistic and pretentious in these characters' mouths that I kind of went, oh, stop, stop. So I rolled my eyes and cringed, but I got through it. There's a part where one of the characters says, somehow I think we're all guilty of this crime, and who among us has not had thoughts of harming others, and here's what we've all done wrong. We could all learn. Like, it was just a little didactic, right? Or a little much. But I guess the author was trying to make a point, and some of the things that she had to say were pretty good. I just I don't like being beaten over the head with this kind of stuff. I like it to kind of be there below the surface for me to kind of extract through my own reading, as opposed to having the writer slam me over the head with it. I don't think any of these characters are series characters. This is a standalone. I think that the two things that I found the most interesting here were the fact that a town would build an obelisk to a hero of the Vietnam War right then and there, as soon as he gets home. So imagine looking out the window of your house and seeing an obelisk with your name on it, erected in your honor. I can only imagine the kind of pressure that would put on oneself to live up to a certain standard, or to have imposter syndrome, or wonder, do I really deserve this obelisk in my hometown? Just was weird, right? Like, I look out my office window, I don't see any obelisk to myself, nor will I ever. Just feel like a weird concept. Interestingly, the most interesting person in this book is really not the hero or investigator, but an old history teacher who he's retired, and what he's trying to do with his retirement is help get troublemaking teenage boys, more onto the straight and narrow, right? Getting them to work at jobs and have a path towards the future. Like, instead of staying on that road where, prison is going to be likely at some point because they're just a little wild and don't have good parental guidance, he's gently trying to help them on his path. And I thought that's really a noble thing to do, to look at the younger generation and want to do something for them. And so he's disappointed by his boys. They're all boys. There are no girls in his program. And you kind of feel his heartbreak when he sees that he's kind of being made a fool of by some of these guys. And he thought that they were being serious and being honest with him, and instead they were lying and kind of making him out to be a fool behind his back. And so that was the most kind of heartfelt part of the book for me. The least heartfelt was, this was one of those books that has those insta relationships where Hall falls madly in love with the first woman he encounters in Shelton. She is the local librarian. She has come to live with her brother, whose wife died in a hit-and-run accident. And, the minute she meets Hall, she's threatening him and telling him to get the hell out of town, and no good could come of his being here. So, of course, being fiction, is love at first sight. They, for him at least, he makes her go out to dinner with him, and, within a day, he's willing to propose marriage. This kind of stuff, I know it's fiction, and I know it happens in real life, but I just can't ever quite buy it. The idea that you'd want to marry someone one day after meeting them. It's cynical me can't quite buy that. But it's part of the book, so if you like a little bit of romance, you'll find that there, with some snappy dialogue between the two of them. The librarian is no dummy, so she is a good match for Hall, who, he's, as an investigator, he's okay. Certainly I wanted to see him bring the killer to justice. I didn't connect with him a lot, and I think that's why this book for me was kind of like just sort of an average read. I couldn't connect with really any of the main characters. I also felt like the plot was so out of storytelling 101 or mystery 101 that I couldn't find anything really interesting to grab onto, except for, like I said, that older history teacher who's trying to help the younger generation. One thing I've noticed about the Dodd Mead Red Badge books is they often have a little bit of sexism in them, which, you know, if we're reading books from this era, we have to accept that it's going to be in there. But it's it sometimes does take me by surprise. Like, for example, in this book, one man calls his girlfriend a wench. He says to her, "Get me my breakfast, wench," or, "Get me a cup of coffee, wench." And that just made me laugh out loud. I mean, the word wench, who uses it anymore? And certainly not even in that context. A lot of the women I know, if anyone called them a wench, they'd, take out a gun and blow your brains out. So expect some older ways of thinking, older ways of acting, more traditional sex roles, and, some more like male condescension towards women. That is in here as well. I usually close by giving a little bit of a publishing coda. And one thing I thought it would be interesting to mention is that a lot of these Red Badge books from this era have the same interior design. So in other words, the same font for their chapter number, chapter title, the same font for the text, and the same leading, meaning the same spacing between lines. So what that told me is that they just had a standard design for most of their books, which is actually a pretty good money-saving technique that publishers can use, right? They figure not everybody is going to read all the books published by that imprint. They'll probably not even notice this similarity. Or maybe they wanted the similarity because they wanted this kind of look and feel to be part of the experience of reading a book in their imprint. So, nowadays it would be a really good way to just save on design costs and typesetting costs. And I'm sure the same back then. And it's a pleasant design. You can see here, nice spacing on the page, right? Nice clear font, nice margins, nice spacing between the lines, easy to read. So I think that part of the Dodd Mead editors' zeitgeist or goal was to keep these books feeling easy to read and the pages turning rapidly, and that does happen here. So all told, Rae Foley and the Shelton Conspiracy, the whole maze thing on the cover, I don't know, didn't feel particularly germane to the book, but it's cool enough to look at. I mean, a maze is a cool thing. So I don't know. I think I have another Rae Foley somewhere here in the house that I picked up somewhere along the line, and I will read it. I can't say I closed the book and thought, wow, got to get me some more Rae Foley immediately. But if you decide to read it, of course, I'd be interested in hearing what you thought about it, or if you've read any other Rae Foley. And it would be really, really fun to do a comparison contrast of this book with a book from the modern era. It's kind of, I always find myself doing that while I'm reading anyway. And if I were, in a kind of job where I wrote academic papers, I think I could have a field day with this topic. I could write books or volumes about it. But of course, I never will. Okay, so thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and I will be back next time.